AWS QC 591, AWS Standard for Certification of Welding Educators. The welding educator is a person who recognizes welding training requirements, prepares instruction plans, conducts training classes, and evaluates students' performance. The welding educator may teach using prepared instructional material or prepare original instructional materials. The welding educator shall conduct welding classes including both skills and technical. The welding educator must be thoroughly familiar with welding processes, welding procedures, welder qualifications, materials, the limitation of weld testing, must be able to read drawings, prepare and keep records, prepare and make reports. The activities performed by the welding educator shall be consistent with these requirements and with technical and ethical principles. The welding educator should be able to prepare with the school administrator or a welder with ease and an appreciation of the role of each. The AWS program for the certification of welding educators has been developed to define minimum standards for welding educators and to provide a means of recognition for those who demonstrate that they have to have the skills, knowledge, and experience in the field of welding education. Scope. This standard established the requirements for the AWS certification of welding educators, describe how personnel are qualified, and outline the principles of conduct and practice by which certification may be maintained. In the certification process, the AWS conducts examination which verifies a person's skills and knowledge of welding fabrication and required documentation of their teaching skills. It shall be the responsibility of the employer to determine that a person is capable of performing the duties involved in their welding educator assignment. This standard is intended to supplement the requirements of the employer or of state regulations. It shall not be construed as a premission of the employer's responsibility for the work or for the performance of the work. Levels of certification. A certified welding educator (CWE) is a person certified by AWS as having met the qualification requirements of Clause 5.1 and Section 6. This shall be the only level of certification of welding educators. Definitions. Terms used in this standard are defined as follows. Acceptance criteria. Specified limits placed on one characteristic of an item or process defined in code, standards, or other contract requirement documents. Applicant. A person who applies to the AWS for certification. AWS, the American Welding Society. Certificate, a document issued to the candidate on successful completion of the requirements for certification. Certification, the act of determining, verifying, and attesting in writing to the qualification of personnel in accordance with specified requirements. Fabrication, to construct or manufacture to a specification. Inspection, examination or measurement to verify whether an item or activity conforms to specified requirements. Inspector, a person who performs an inspection function to verify conformance to specified requirements. Other terms. All other terms used herein are defined by ANSI AWS A3.0 Standard Welding Terms and Definitions. Q&C Committee, the Qualification and Certification Committee of the American Welding Society. Q&C Department, the Qualification and Certification Department of the American Welding Society. Qualification Personnel, demonstrated skill, training, knowledge, and experience required for personnel to properly perform duties of a specific job. Qualified to have demonstrated the ability to weld with a process to an industry standard. This may be done by welding some test plates such as the AWS D1.1 Taker test, plate test, or pipe test with acceptance verified by testing by an independent testing laboratory to a published standard. Terminology guidelines. As used in the standard, the word shall denotes as requirement, the word should denotes a guidelines, and the word may denotes a choice. Training institution. Organization which train people for employment in the field of welding. This includes for fee organization open to the public or in-house training organization who train only their own employees. Verification. The act of reviewing, inspecting, testing, checking, auditing, otherwise determining and documenting whether items, processes, services, or documents conform to specified requirements. Weldment, an assembly whose component parts are joined by welding. Function of welding educator. The welding educator has the responsibility to direct and perform operations associated with welder training and classroom instruction. The activity begins before instruction and continue through the instruction process and do not end until both the students and instruction process have been evaluated. Each employer is responsible for defining the specific duty of a welding educator in respective place of employment. The AWS certified welding educator shall be able to demonstrate the capability of performing the task defined in this standard. The tasks of welding educator include but are not limited to welding codes, drawings, and specifications. The welding educator shall be capable of reading and explaining typical welding codes, drawings, and specifications. This requires a knowledge of welding symbols and of welding definitions and terminology. Base material and welding materials. The welding educator instructs students on base materials and their weldability characteristics and on welding filler metal types and characteristics. Welding equipment. The welding educator conducts instruction on the characteristics and operation of various power sources and other related equipment, provides basic safety instruction in the use of the equipment, troubleshoots and demonstrates the proper use of equipment. Welding skills. The welding educator shall be qualified per AWS or equal standards with the welding processes to be taught. Review of welding instructions. The welding educator shall review the written welding instructional materials to determine that they comply with the appropriate code or standard. The welding educator may write new welding instruction or lesson plans and shall be able to perform all testing required to qualify welding students. Evaluation of welder training. The welding educator evaluates the performance of welding students to verify that they are properly trained and qualified in accordance with the applicable welding procedures. The welding educator reviews and verifies that the work being performed follows the instruction. Inspection. The welding educator performs visual inspections of the in-process and completed weldments to confirm that they comply with the documents. Reports. The welding educator prepares clear and concise reports of the reviews, inspection results, and performance data. Welding safety. The welding educator instructs welding safety in accordance with ANSI ASC Z49.1 Safety in Welding and Cutting, published by the American Welding Society, and with occupational safety and health administrative rules as written in the Code of Federal Regulations CFR and other approved safe practices. Education and experience requirements. The following applies to each applicant for certification as Certified Welding Educator CWE. The applicant shall be a high school graduate or hold a state or military approved high school equivalence diploma. Acceptable alternatives to 5.1 and class 5.2 with supporting documentation, e.g., copies of transcripts, letters of reference, etc., which specify credited hours of training, quarter hours, or semester hours. A maximum of 2 years of post high school education may be substituted for an equal number of years of the required 5 years experience, provided the studies were irrelevant to any of the functions covered in clause 5.2. Credits are given as follows: 2 years minimum in engineering technology, engineering, physics, or sciences. B. Engineering technical school courses. 2 years maximum of successfully completed courses in a curriculum can be applied to A above. C. Trade vocational courses. 1 year maximum of successfully completed courses in a curriculum related to welding can be applied to A above. Courses in the curriculum means courses within a body of courses offered toward a degree or which can be applied to a degree in an above successfully completed courses means a completed quarter or semester with credited in the courses documentation of the number of actual hours completed is necessary. The applicant shall have no less than 5 years experience in an occupational function that has direct relationship to weldments fabricated to a code or standard. Relevant teaching experience may be substituted. Proper documentation, e.g., photocopied summaries of subjects taught, teaching certificates, and letters of reference. Relevant experience shall be considered on the following basis: full-time teaching of the occupational skills of welding or of subjects related to welding, its application, its control, and its materials, and a process in a secondary or post-secondary institution, and shall be directly involved in one or more of the following: production, planning and control of welding materials, welding procedures and welding operations for weldments, construction, welding, fabrication and erection of weldments, inspection, detection and measurements of weld discontinuities and the verification of fabrication requirements, repair, repair of welds that were found to be defective. The applicant shall submit written verification of documented employment with the application. This verification shall be completed and signed by the applicant, most recent employment supervisor, or the appropriate personnel department staff. The applicant shall be able to explain and demonstrate the welding and cutting process to be taught. The applicant shall be thoroughly familiar and capable of performing the duties described in Section 4 functions. Examination requirements. The following applies to a CWE applicant. The applicant shall pass a written examination on fundamental welding principles, including welding processes, non-destructive testing processes, safety, basic welding metallurgy, welding symbols, print reading, equipment, process, equipment, troubleshooting, and basic arithmetic, or have passed either the CWI or CAWI closed book examination. The applicant shall pass a test on practical welding inspection, including determining qualification standards from a code or specification, or have passed either the CWI or CAWI practical examination. The applicant shall have a valid AWS certified welder ID certification card or its equal, or shall pass a valid AWI certified welder test for the welding process to be taught. The applicant shall furnish evidence of having met the instructional methods requirements of the applicant's school, college, or training institution. Evidence shall also be furnished of successful classroom and laboratory instructions. This shall consist of written evaluation by the applicant's administrator or recommendations that the applicant be recognized as an AWS certified welding educator. Certification. The American Welding Society shall issue to each CWE applicant who complies with the requirements of Section 5.1 and 6 as applicable as serialized unique number certificate and a valid card stating that the applicant has met the AWS certification requirements. Certification shall be valid for 4 years unless revoked for reasons defined in 8.6 and Section 9. Revocation. The certification shall indicate the date of certification. The valid card shall indicate the expiration date of certification. Code of Ethics. Certified Welding Educator CWE Preamble. In order to safeguard the health and well-being of the public and to maintain integrity and high standards of skills, practice, and conduct in the occupation of welding educator, the American Welding Society (CWE) shall be cognizant of the following principles and the scope to which they apply, with the understanding that any unauthorized practice of subject to the Q&C Committee's review and may result in the suspension or revocation of certification. Integrity. The CWI shall act with complete integrity in professional matters and be forthright and candid with the Q&C Committee or its representatives on matters pertaining to this standard. Responsibility to the public. The CWI shall act to preserve the health and well-being of the public by performing the duties required of welding instruction in a conscientious and impartial manner to the full extent of the educator's moral and civic responsibility and qualification. The CWI shall undertake and perform as assignments only when qualified by training, experience, and capability. Credentials shall be shown upon request. The CWE shall be completely objective, thorough, and factual in any writing report, statement, or testimony of the work and include all relevant or written testimony in such communicates or testimonials. The CWE shall sign only for work that the CWE has completed or for work over which the CWE has personal knowledge through direct supervision. The CWE shall neither associate with nor knowledgeably participate in the fraudulent or dishonest welding venture. Public statements. The CWI shall issue no statements, criticism, or arguments on welding matters connected with public policy which have been inspired or paid for by an interested party or parties without first identifying the party, the speaker, and disclosing any possible pecuniary interest. The CWI shall not publicly express an opinion on a welding subject unless it is founded upon adequate knowledge of the fact at issue, upon a background of technical competence patient or to the subject, and upon honest conviction of the accuracy and propriety of the statement. Conflict of interest. The CWI shall avoid conflict of interest with the employer or client and shall disclose any business association or circumstance that might be so perceived. The CWE shall not accept compensation, financial or otherwise, from more than one party for services on the same project. or for services pertaining to the same project unless the circumstances are fully disclosed and agreed to by all interested parties or their authorized agents. The CWE shall neither solicit nor accept gratuities directly or indirectly from any party or parties dealing with the client or employer in connection with the CWE's work. Solicitation of employment. The CWI shall not pay, solicit, or offer directly or indirectly any bribe or commission for professional employment with the exception of the usually commission required from licensed employment agencies. The CWI shall not falsely exaggerate or indulge in the misinterpretation of personal academic and professional qualifications, past assignments, accomplishments, and responsibilities, or those of the inspector associates. The CWE is not a certified welding inspector unless certification has been attained in accordance with the AWSQC1 AWS standard for certification of welding inspectors. Caution: while the CWE may have established excellent credentials, certification alone may not be legally qualify the CWE to provide training services to the public. Status may require training to be performed under the direction and responsibility of others. Unauthorized practice: any violation of any standard of conduct prescribed by the standard if related to a CWE's occupation, including any violation of the code of ethics contained in the standard, shall constitute an unauthorized practice subject to the imposition of sanctions. Revocation Committee. The Q&C Committee shall have the power to suspend, refuse the renewal of, or revoke the CWE certification for misrepresentation of facts regarding personnel qualifications and assignments relating to CWE certifications, and to place on probation or to reprimand the certificate holder if found guilty of an unauthorized practice in a proceeding conducted in accordance with the administrative procedure for alleged violations available from the Q&C department. Courts. The committee may apply to any court of competent jurisdiction for further enforcement of its administrative decisions and ruling. Reinstatement. Reinstatement of a revoked certificate shall be allowed with no penalty or prejudice to the individual, provided the cause of such revocation has been rectified to the committee's satisfaction. Recertification renewal. The CWI shall be responsible for the following: maintaining a current address with the Q&C department for mailing or for corresponding relative to the educator's application, examination, certification, recertification; submitting either a renewal application postmarked by the expiration date of the current certificate, or a written request for renewal application postmarked at least one calendar month prior to the expiration date. The CWE may be recertified every 4 years by meeting the requirements for renewal. To request the renewal of certification, the CWE shall complete a current renewal of certification form. Application shall further attest to 2 years of activity during their 4-year certification in the practice, in the welding education, or in related activities as defined in clause 5.2. The requirements for 2 years of relevant activity may be reduced to 1 year by satisfactorily completing a Q&C committee approved course presented by AWS Education Department. when applying for the renewal of certification that has expired or choosing recertification by examination, the CWE shall be considered as new applicants and shall require only completion of a renewal application. Note: the Q&C department shall notify each CWE of the expiration of certification and requirements of recertification. Notice shall be mailed approximately 90 days in advance of the expiration date, subject to of the certification. Notification of address changes to one AWS department, e.g., notify the Q&C department at AWS directly as general subscription or membership. Does not automatically notify other departments such as Q&C. Step 2. Certification becomes effectively on the first day of the month following the date of examination and expires on the first day of that month. 4 years later, an expiration grace period exists until the last day of that month. Thank you for watching. Like, share, comment, and subscribe, please.